All right, we are ready to get started. We are live on YouTube, so behave yourselves. Welcome everyone watching back home to the Trial by Combat 2023 award ceremony. My name is Phil Pasquarello. I'm the trial competition director here at the Drexel University Thomas Arkline School of Law. And before we get into the actual awards portion, I just want to say a couple of thank yous. First off, thank you to our judges. Many of you are in the room here today for the award ceremony. We had more than 7 judges per round on average in every single round, including the preliminaries, obviously. More than half of those judges were attorneys, and we had more than a dozen former trial by combat competitors and All-Americans. So we're really fortunate to have such a great panel, and thank you to all of you who are here watching. I want to thank a few people individually. First, Will Warhay. Will, would you stand for a second? As I'm sure most of you know, Will is the former president of AMTA, coach at Georgia Tech, and helped us a ton this weekend with judge assignments, scoring, logistics, the whole thing. We're really grateful to Will for being here to help us. Thanks, Will. I want to thank my fiance, Jess Falkenstein. You have to stand too. All of the catering, the food, breakfast, lunch, I had nothing to do with it. I didn't do a thing for any of that, just handled all that stuff in addition to judging and helping with logistics and all of that stuff. And we're really grateful for your help. Thank you. Yeah, clap for my fiance. I want to thank 3 other people who were bailiffs in all of your rounds: Clark Doig, Allison Stevens, and Zach Cotter. If you 3 would stand. They were the bailiffs in all of your trials. They recorded the trials. They helped a lot with making sure your trials ran smoothly. Zach and Clark are the co-presidents of our program, and Zach, Clark, and Allison are courtroom scholars and members of our trial team, which, for those of you who don't know, are the scholarships that the law school offers to former AMTA competitors. And we're really excited to see what they do this upcoming season. The last person I want to thank is Will Mueller. Will, if you would stand. Will was invaluable to this tournament. All the things that I just mentioned, the stuff that Will Warhay did, the stuff that Jess did, the stuff that Clark, Allison, and Zach did. Will did all of that. He helped with the catering. He helped with the recording of the trials. He was a bailiff in all of the trials. On Friday, you probably saw him moving all of the chairs from the basement to the 5th floor, so that way we could have as many spectators in these rounds as we could. And we really couldn't have done this without your help. So thank you, Will. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Justin for the announcement of our top 8.
We will start in 8th place. We recognize our top half of the field. In 8th place, and so for 8th, 7th, and 6th, we'll ask you stand to be recognized. We have trophies for the top 5. In 8th place, from Emory, Danielle Jacoby. In 7th place, from Northwestern, Taj Burnett. So what's cool is of our top 6, half of them were making their school's first ever appearance at this tournament. In 6th place, from Georgia, Brian Walker. And I understand Brian's a junior. Just like our 5th place finisher from Chicago, Sam Farnsworth. We'll be releasing all the scores during the final round. We'll get those out to your private score sheets. And before we announce who's advancing to the finals, I'd like to recognize all the 4 semifinalists. Please stand up. All right, so last that 4th and 3rd, when your name is come for your trophy. In 4th place, from Brad, Michael Chandler. And in 3rd place, from Michigan, Michael Sean Wilson. Going to have our presiding judge around introduce our finalists, explain the rules for the final. I'm honored to introduce our final round judge. This is the trial competition director at Drexel. It's an appropriate person to judge the final because his teams at Drexel have appeared in the final round of competitions 5 straight tournaments, including Top Gun National Championship. He himself is a former Top Gun National Champion. In 2018, he is one of 2 students in the 30-year history of tournament champions to win the tournament with best stack in the final round twice. It's one of the most accomplished law school competitors in the country. I'm a little biased. That doesn't mean wrong to say he is the best young mock trial coach in the country at the law school level. He's extraordinary. His show I've heard is okay. Phil Pasquarello.
Okay, so if I could have Josiah Jones and Travis Harper join me. All right, so Travis, you being the 1 seed, you get to select your side. What's it going to be? That means that, Mr. Jones, you'll be representing the government. Okay, so the trial is going to start at 3 p.m. So in just about 45 minutes, I want to go over some of the rules. The coaching rule with respect to communications is as soon as witness prep starts, there's to be no more communication between you guys and your coaches. So you're free to start that when you want, but once that starts, no more communication. 35 minutes per side, just like the semifinal. And we have a new pretrial order. Okay. Calm down. It's going to be okay. I promise. All right, so I'm just going to read you the most relevant portion of the pretrial order. It's number 4. The government's witness list includes only Morgan DeVico and Joe Wooden. The defense's witness list includes only Blake Crosby. This does not preclude the parties from reading onto the record statements from other individuals subject to objections. Okay, so the government's going to call DeVico and Wooden, and the defense is going to call the defendant. Okay. So I'm going to buy you guys a second to think about who you want to pick, but I'm going to tell you what the rules are for selections. You may not choose someone you've already directed in that role. Okay, so you have to pick someone new if you've directed that person in that role previously. So I'm going to buy you guys a couple of seconds, and while they're thinking, I want to talk to you guys about the final round panel. I'm going to introduce them when we actually start the trial in 45 minutes, but as you guys know, we like to have a theme for our final round panel. And this year's final round panel is going to be all of the recent Top Gun competitors and second chairs from Drexel Klein. So we're going to have a really awesome panel. Are you guys ready? Okay. Josiah? Who's it going to be? Mr. Harper? Mr. Jones? Actually, as you guys know, we really wanted to include more schools this year in trial by combat. So we wanted to have someone in this final round play the part of Joe Wooden that's never from a school that's never competed at this event before. So as you guys know, UC Berkeley has never competed here. So we're going to have someone from UC Berkeley play your Joe Wooden, if that's okay with you. This is a 3-time All-American from UC Berkeley. And I've seen him witness a few times. He's not bad. The director of trial advocacy from the UCLA School of Law, Justin Bernstein. All right. Do you guys have any questions? No. You know better. Yeah. All right. We'll see you guys at 3:00. Pretrial order 1 says the government has charged the defendant with murder under 18 U.S. Code section 101. Defendant has pled not guilty. The defendant has raised no affirmative defenses. The parties may not amend the pleadings at trial. This federal court has proper jurisdiction over this matter. The only legal authorities that may be cited at trial are this trial order, the jury instructions, and the federal rules of evidence. The government's witness list includes only Morgan DeVico and Joe Wooden. The defense's witness list includes only Blake Crosby. This does not preclude the parties from reading into the record statements from other individuals subject to the question. The parties submitted a joint exhibit list attached to this order. Exhibits retain their markings, numbers regardless of the order introduced. At trial, the parties may not offer exhibits other than those on the joint exhibit list. All notice requirements under the federal rules of evidence have been satisfied. All objections arise under the Constitution as amendment overruled. Before trial, this court convened an evidentiary hearing regarding the conclusions as stated in Exhibit 16. The court finds that the forensic examiner's qualifications, data, methods, conclusions satisfy Federal Evidence 702. The samples of the defendant's fingerprints and DNA were properly obtained. All objections under Federal Rule of Evidence 702 were denied and preserved, and they may not be raised at trial.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, giving this a test before it's go time. Go time in 5 minutes, testing, 1, 2, 3.
All right, you guys can have a seat. Welcome to the 2023 Trial by Combat Championship Trial. Before we begin, I want to just introduce our scoring judges one at a time, and I'll just have you guys stand when I introduce you. I'm going to start with oldest to youngest. So first, Jess Falkenstein. She's a two-time national champion as a competitor at the Drexel Klein School of Law. She was my second chair at Top Gun 2018. And in 2017, she was the national champion at the Tournament of Champions, which is the biggest fall invitational in law school mock trial. And she's a civil defense attorney in Philadelphia. Next is Will Booth. He was the 2020 Top Gun from Drexel Klein. He was the winner of Region 3, the 2020 Region 3 National Trial Competition. He was the outstanding advocate at the Buffalo Niagara Invitational every fall. And he is currently an attorney in the New Jersey Attorney General's office. Ryan Nacino was the 2021 Top Gun from Drexel Klein. Ryan attended Drexel Klein on a courtroom scholarship, which is the scholarship that the law school offers to former AMTA competitors. Ryan was a national champion and best advocate at the 2019 Kelly competition. And the regional champion of the 2021 National Trial Competition. And currently he's a public defender in Philadelphia. He's also a coach on our coaching staff where he coached our students to tournament wins. His second chair in 2021 was Nicole Furlani. Nicole was also here on a courtroom scholarship. She has coached multiple teams to championship trials as a coach on our staff, including most recently the AAJ Regional Trial Competition. And she was also a national champion at the 2019 Kelly competition and the 2021 National Trial Competition. She's currently a public defender in Baltimore. The 2022 Top Gun from Drexel Klein was Grace Grimes. She was the 2021 National Trial Competition Best Advocate for Region 3. She was the back-to-back regional winner of that competition in 2022 and 2021. She's a coach on our coaching staff, and she's currently a trial attorney at Klein Inspector, which is the biggest plaintiff's firm in Pennsylvania, where she sits right next to me. The 2023 Top Gun second chair was B. Schaefer. When B got to the law school, she had no mock trial experience. And in just 2 semesters, B appeared in 6 championship trials, which is a record from law school. She just graduated last month and she's studying for the bar. And in a few months, she will begin at the Delaware Public Defender's Office. And last, but certainly not least, Clark Doig was the 2023 Top Gun from Drexel Klein, where he finished second out of thousands of students in the country just a few weeks ago in Waco, Texas. Clark is also here on a courtroom scholarship. This semester alone, so just in the past couple of months, Clark was in 4 championship trials of 4 different competitions. And the best fact of all about Clark is he still has 1 more year. With that, we're ready to go. Are both parties present and ready to proceed?
The government is here and ready, Your Honor.
The defense is here and ready to proceed as well, Your Honor.
Great. You ready to open?
May we make appearances?
Sure.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Josiah Jones, and today I'm joined by my co-counsel, Mr. Dylan Darwish.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
Together, we represent the United States government, and I'm joined at council table by Agent Morgan DeVica.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Hi. Your appearances from the defense.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name's Travis Harper. I'm joined here today with my colleague, Ms. Jessica Alexander.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Together, we represent the defendant in today's case, Ms. Blake Crosby.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon. All right. Are there any pretrial matters or motions we have to talk about before we open?
Just a couple pretrial matters, Your Honor. First, we'd like to invoke Rule 603, constructively swearing in any witnesses that testify throughout the course of today's trial.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Okay, granted.
Next, Your Honor, we'd like to ask your preferences, since this is our first time having the pleasure of serving in your courtroom as it relates to approaching opposing counsel, the witness stand, Your Honor, and the jury. Would Your Honor prefer that we ask permission?
You have free reign to move about the courtroom with a couple of exceptions. If you're approaching the other side's witness, please ask permission each time. You don't need permission to approach the bench. The only exception to that is if we're close enough to high five. Other than that, your courtroom.
Yes, Your Honor. Lastly, we've prepared a binder of exhibits for the convenience of the witnesses who testify in today's trial. Do we have permission from my co-counsel to place that exhibit binder on the witness stand?
Yes, just please make a record to the extent that the witness is referring to something or has an exhibit in front of them. Just make sure you're making a clear record of that. Okay.
Understood, Your Honor.
What else?
With that, we're ready for opening statements.
Anything from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. Quick note on that binder. The exhibits in there are actually, no objections, you can put on the witness stand. Just like to draw the court's attention to the fact that we've actually agreed on exhibit numbers, so they've been pre-marked. And those are the ones that we'll be referring to throughout trial for the record.
Is that so?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Not with me.
With that, we're ready to go to openings as well.
Awesome. Government, you can proceed with your opening statement when ready.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please court. This defendant took a life to stop the vote. It's July 4th, 2022. And Thomas Capello is on the ground. He's not breathing. He's dead. Someone has just assassinated the person who is very likely going to be our nation's next president. And today you're going to learn that the person who pulled the trigger that day, that was this defendant, Blake Crosby. Because what you're going to learn today is that Senator Thomas Capello and this defendant, well, they had two very different views about the military. You're going to hear that Senator Capello, he wanted to defund the military, actively advocated for it every time he took a stance. And you're going to learn that this defendant spent 8 years serving in our military, that she's proud of the service that she did, and she wasn't going to let someone in office who holds a negative view of the military hold our highest office in the land. So you're going to find out what she did. You're going to hear that she walked up to the roof of the Sonesta Hotel wearing all black clothing, having a drawstring bag holding her rifle. And she set up that rifle on the edge of that rooftop and waited for the first word of Senator Capello and shot him. Today, you're going to learn that this defendant took Senator Capello's life to stop the vote. That's why we as the government have charged this defendant with murder. And as I'm sure Mr. Harper will tell you in just a moment, that means as the government, we have the burden of proof to prove our case beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's a burden we embrace. We're going to meet it by proving to you the elements of this crime. Who killed Thomas Capello? And why did they do it? We're going to do that by showing you three things today. This defendant's means, her motive, and her opportunity. Starting with her means. Because today you're going to hear all about this defendant's service in the U.S. military. That she spent 8 years serving on the military as a sniper. And you're going to hear that that uniquely prepared her for this crime. Because you're going to learn that the distance between the Sonesta Hotel and the place where Mr. Capello was shot, it was so far that the only person who could have hit it was a trained sniper. You're going to learn that this defendant had all the experience necessary to commit this crime. Then we're going to show you her motive, because you're going to hear about those differing views. We're going to call a Secret Service agent to the stand today, the person who was on the protection detail for Mr. Thomas Capello. He's going to tell you that this defendant posted tweet after tweet expressing her hatred for Thomas Capello's views, for everything that he stood for. And you're going to learn that Senator Capello, as he was going to speak on July 4th of 2022, you'll hear that this defendant knew exactly where he was going to be and expressed those tweets, her hate for Senator Thomas Capello, on the very same day that she found out exactly where he was going to be, right here in Philadelphia. Then finally, we're going to show you this defendant's opportunity to commit this crime. Because you'll hear from an FBI examiner today, Dr. Joseph Wooden. He's going to tell you about two very important ideas that'll confirm that this defendant had the opportunity to commit this crime. The distance that this crime occurred in, and the physical evidence matching the defendant. Because you're going to hear that the distance between the defendant, the distance between the Sonesta Hotel and where Mr. Capello was shot, it was only at a distance that a trained sniper could hit. You're going to learn that the bullet, it matched a bullet, that this defendant was familiar with. And you're going to learn that this defendant's DNA was present on that rooftop. We're going to show you a cigarette butt, a cigarette that this defendant smoked just before she shot Senator Thomas Capello. Means, motive, opportunity. Members of the jury, throughout today's trial, I want you to think about why this country operates the way that it does. Why we are able to civilly disagree with one another, express the views that we are. The bedrock of our country is public discourse, the rights for people to disagree. And today, you're going to learn that this defendant stole the right of people to civilly disagree, stole the right of people to vote for the candidate that they wanted, and stole the life of a senator, someone who the American people were going to elect as their next president. Today, you're going to learn that this defendant took Thomas Capello's life to stop that vote. That's why at the end of today's trial, I'll stand before you again and I'll ask that you find this defendant guilty of murder. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, counsel. Defense, do you wish to make an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Proceed.
May it please the court? Mr. Jones, members of the jury, they couldn't find the shooter, but they need an answer. It's July 4th, 2022, and Secret Service agent Morgan DeVica is standing in Rittenhouse Square. Behind him, presidential candidate Thomas Capello. He scans the room, looking for the glint of a knife or a gun before it's too late. 21 years on the job, and he still gets that hit in his stomach. His attention snaps to the presidential candidate behind him as he hears the pop of a gunshot. The Secret Service hasn't lost a presidential candidate since 1968 until today. On his watch. He can't see the shooter. He's surrounded by thousands of people. There's thousands more in the buildings around him. He can see the headlines now. Thomas Capello assassinated. Where was the Secret Service? He's not a homicide detective, but he needs to find an answer. A few hours later, his phone rings. A hotel employee says, someone tried to smoke on my roof. And in that moment, that agent might have not found the shooter, but today you'll learn he certainly found his answer. Because today, that person that just tried to smoke on the roof, she's on trial for the murder of a major presidential candidate. And when Mr. Jones and his team of prosecutors here decided to charge Miss Crosby, they took on a burden. Mr. Jones is right. I'm going to bring it up because it's important. And I want you to think about it throughout the entirety of today's trial. It's a burden to prove their case beyond all reasonable doubt. It's the heaviest burden in our legal system, members of the jury, and it's not one that the government is going to be able to meet today. Because over the course of today's trial, I want you to pay attention to three holes that the government just won't be able to explain away. No weapon, no witness, no plan. So let's go through them. First, the government doesn't have a weapon. You know, your first thought was that I'm here for a murder case. I'm probably going to see a murder weapon. Not in this trial. Today, you're going to learn that the gun that was used to murder Thomas Capello, it wasn't just any gun. It was a military-grade sniper weapon But you're not gonna see a sniper rifle today. You're not even gonna see a picture of one. Why? The Secret Service never found one. And today, you're not gonna hear from a single person or see a single thing that says that Mr. Crosby had access to that kind of gun before July 4th. No witness. The Secret Service talked to a lot of people over the course of this investigation. And today you're going to hear not one of them said, well, I saw Mr. Crosby on the top of the roof with a rifle in his hand, or even I saw Mr. Crosby with a rifle in Philadelphia, much less I saw her pull the trigger. The closest thing to an eyewitness you'll hear today is a hotel employee that said, well, Miss Crosby tried to go onto my roof, but when she told them that employees only, she just went back downstairs. So finally, they don't have evidence of a plan. Today, these prosecutors are going to want to make you believe that this was the perfect crime. There were no security in the stairwell. That rooftop was open access, but I said, listen to the evidence today. I want you to listen for any that proves that Miss Crosby would have known about any of that before she stepped foot in Philadelphia. We expect you won't hear it. Look. Miss Crosby will be the first to admit she didn't like Mr. Capello. But she's going to waive her Fifth Amendment right to not testify, to sit on that stand and tell you she certainly didn't kill him. At the end of this trial, you're going to be asking why we're here today. And you'll see the answer is that all Miss Crosby is guilty of is going to Philadelphia, smoking on the roof. And the Secret Service, they just couldn't accept that because they couldn't find the shooter. So they needed to find an answer. So they picked one. That's why at the end of this trial, I'm going to stand before you again. And I'm going to ask you to find Miss Crosby not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Government, call your first witness.
We call Agent Morgan DeVico. May we proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Counselor.
Would you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Morgan DeVico.
What do you do for a living, Mr. DeVico?
Well, I like to say that I am the black man in black. Currently work for the protection unit of the Secret Service for the United States.
How long have you worked in the Secret Service, sir?
21 years.
What qualifies you to work with the Secret Service?
Well, I got my bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of Chicago, and I applied to become a Secret Service agent. Passed all the tests, moved up in the ranks, and now I'm head of security.
Those tests that you passed, did that include investigative experience?
Yes, outside of protecting important political figures, being a Secret Service agent means that you investigate events surrounding things like forensics, witness surveillance, and in this case, investigating assassinations.
So how is it that you became involved in the matters of today's case?
Last year, on July 4th, I was head of protection for Senator Capello. He was giving a speech right here in Rittenhouse Square, and he was shot.
So you just said that Senator Thomas Capello was shot. What day was that?
July 4th, 2022, right around 1:45 p.m.
Were you in attendance, sir?
I was. I wasn't on the stage with him, but I was in the crowd near the front.
Sir, I need you to walk the members of the jury through that moment. Can you tell us what happened? Or excuse me, when was it that Mr. Capello was shot?
The rally started around 1. There were a few other speakers before him. He took the stage at 1:45. Just a minute later, a gunshot rang out and he fell to the ground.
Did you see what happened to Mr. Capella?
He was covered in blood and he'd been shot right in the forehead.
Agent, you hear just a moment ago when Mr. Harper said that you didn't find a shooter and you needed an answer for this crime.
I heard him say that.
Well, sir, let's walk the members of the jury through the investigative steps that you took to find the answer to this crime. What exactly did you do?
Immediately after the shot rang out, we began our investigation. The FBI, as well as the forensics team, worked together to try and locate potential spots where the shooter could have fired.
With that in mind, sir, I want to break down whether you found evidence of a means, a motive, and an opportunity in the course of your investigation. Starting with a means, sir. Did you ever find any evidence to believe that the defendant had the means to commit this crime?
I did. Later on through the day, we got an anonymous tip from a hotel. They told us that they'd seen someone go to the rooftop. It's the defendant, Blake Crosby.
We're going to come back to that eyewitness testimony, sir, but do you know if this defendant served in the military?
I did. After that ID, I pulled some background checks and looked at that defendant's military record.
Would you recognize that background check and this defendant's military record if I showed you in court today?
I would.
If you can flip in that binder that's in front of you to Exhibit 14, and just let me know when you're there.
I'm there.
Sir, do you recognize what I'm showing you there?
Yes, this is the military record of Blake Crosby.
Is it a fair and accurate copy of it?
It appears to be so.
Your Honor, we're offering the first 2 paragraphs of this exhibit into evidence.
You agree to the exhibit being offered with that redaction?
No, Your Honor, we think the entire exhibit is inadmissible, and even with that redaction, it would still be inadmissible and would violate the rule of completeness.
What, so it sounds like you have 2 separate objections.
Yes, Your Honor.
Let's start with the first one,
Of course.
what's the basis?
Your Honor, first, we object to character evidence under Rule 404. If I could give you a bit of background on this document, it actually states that Ms. Crosby was dishonorably discharged from the military. Your Honor, and specifically why, was because she assaulted her responding officer. Your Honor, that's textbook character evidence, propensity being used to show action in conformity therewith. And it would be improper to not include all that information. Excuse me, that's the character evidence objection, Your Honor.
So let's deal with the character evidence objection first. For what purpose is this exhibit being offered?
Yes, Your Honor, under 404B2, we're offering this to show the defendant's skill. If Your Honor would look at Exhibit 14, it actually contains information that details that this defendant has extensive experience as a sniper using sniper rifles, that she's won several sniping competitions. Your Honor, that's relevant information, and it doesn't go in character evidence, or excuse me, it's an accepted use of character evidence under 404B2 because it goes to proving this defendant's skill.
What's your response to that?
Your Honor, if that's the only purpose in which this is being used, we would ask that the rest of the document be redacted and a limiting instruction to that effect be issued to the jury that it's only for her skill and knowledge.
I know the document pretty well, but can I just see a copy of it just so we're on the same page about what's being redacted? Of course. Exactly. All right, so Mr. Harper, what would your proposed redaction be?
Could you say that one more time?
What would your proposed redaction be? One more time?
Your Honor, everything after the description about Ms. Crosby's ability as a sniper should be redacted, including the end of the document that lists that she was dishonorably discharged from the military.
So you would include everything up through 1504 yards.
Yes, Your Honor.
You agree to that redaction?
That's precisely what we offer.
Okay, so that sounds like you have no objection. Am I correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
What was your rule of completeness objection?
Your Honor, I withdraw that objection. With this redaction, we have no objection to the
The
document.
document will be admitted with that redaction.
Yes, Your Honor.
So, sir, can you reference just those top 2 paragraphs in your answer to this next question? When you reviewed the defendant's service record, what did you find?
Well, as you can see in this record, the defendant was an Army sniper in the sniper school for about 8 years and won armed forces all Army sniper competitions on 4 separate occasions.
Sir, does it say anything about a distance that this defendant used a sniper rifle from?
Says that she holds the U.S. Armed Forces record for a bullseye for 1,504 yards.
Then let's talk about whether you found evidence that this defendant had a motive to commit this crime. Sir, did you find anything in your investigation that was relevant to you deeming her having a motive in this case?
We did. As a part of being in the Secret Service, I monitored the internet, social media. We found some posts that the defendant had made in the months leading up to the shoot.
Do you recognize one of those posts if I showed it to you in court today?
I would.
Sir, if you can go and flip to exhibit 12 for me. Let me know when you're there.
I'm there, counsel.
Do you recognize that?
I do. This is one of those posts.
Is it a fair and accurate copy of it?
It is.
Your Honor, we offer exhibit 12 into evidence.
Any objection?
Without objection, Your Honor.
Submitted.
So, sir, when the defendant posted this tweet, what exactly did she say?
Ms. Crosby stated that Thomas R. Capello is a threat to every person in this country. As long as he is alive, none of us are safe.
Sir, do you know what stance Mr. Capello had about the military?
Mr. Capello had a 30% approval rate at the time, but he was a controversial candidate.
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation. That may be heard.
Yes.
Your Honor, this witness just gave a very specific stat that he had 30% approval rating. We've heard no foundation as to how he would know this information and where he's basing that information. So at this point, there's a lack of foundation to that testimony.
What's your response?
We can lay something out, foundation, Your Honor.
So the objection will be overruled pending the foundation, but feel free to raise the objection if the foundation is not laid.
Yes, Your Honor.
Sir, how are you aware of how Senator Capello was doing in the election?
I was assigned as his Secret Service. Did a lot of background information on Senator Capello. I knew about how popular he was, how unpopular he was at other times.
Your Honor, at this time, we would re-raise our objection. Again, that doesn't tell us exactly where he would get a 30% approval rating. Did he look at a poll? Was he reading that from the news? We need to hear that information. Just because he worked for Thomas Capello doesn't mean he knows his approval rating to the percentage point.
What's your response?
Yes, Your Honor, that argument goes to the weight, not the admissibility of this testimony. This witness just offered the fact onto the record that he served on the protection detail for Mr. Capello. He's given the members of the jury an important figure to assess how he was doing in the presidential race. Opposing counsel's argument regarding the foundation of that goes to its weight, not its admissibility.
I don't think the foundation was specific enough, so I'm going to sustain the objection and strike the testimony.
Yes, Your Honor.
Sir, do you know how Mr. Capello stood on the military?
Mr. Capello frequently said at his rallies, I was in attendance at, the military needed to be defunded.
Sir, when you were investigating this case, did you ever come across any evidence of campaign stops?
I did. Right around early April, Senator Capello had announced where he planned to be at for each of his rallies in the month of July.
Sir, if you can go ahead and flip to exhibit 10, but keep your finger on exhibit 12, that tweet.
I'm there.
You recognize exhibit 10?
I do.
What is that?
This is that campaign schedule that I talked about earlier.
Fair and accurate copy of it.
It is.
Your Honor, we offer exhibit 10.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Submitted.
Sir, referencing this exhibit as well as the tweet, can you tell us what date that tweet was posted?
The tweet was posted on April 5th.
Sir, do you know what rally the defendant eventually went to that's relevant in this case?
On July 4th, the defendant stated that she had attended the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
All right, sir, then let's move and talk about whether you found evidence of this defendant having the opportunity to commit this crime. Sir, did you find any type of evidence indicating an opportunity?
I do. Like I stated, we were trying to narrow down the possible locations of the shooter. An anonymous tip came in from one of the hotel staff at a particular hotel within the range of where the shooter could have shot.
Do you know who that person was who gave you that anonymous tip?
I do. Harper Edwards.
Sir, did you ever get a statement from Harper Edwards?
I did.
Would you recognize that statement if I were to show it to you in court today?
Certainly would, counsel.
If you can go ahead and flip to exhibit 17. Do you recognize that?
I do. This is that affidavit from the hotel receptionist.
Is it fair and accurate?
It is.
Your Honor, we offer exhibit 17.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Submitted.
Sir, how was it that you used this sworn statement to determine whether or not the defendant had an opportunity to commit this crime?
The receptionist told us that on the day of the shooting, it actually seen the defendant, Blake Crosby, near the rooftop of the Sonesta Hotel.
Did that clerk identify the defendant?
She did. We showed her a photo array and she picked out the defendant from a list of other residents.
How many pictures were in that photo array that just showed that witness?
Around 20, sir.
Sir, did you find any evidence that this defense, or excuse me, sir, after you found that evidence, what did you do next?
Well, next, we interrogated the defendant, called her in for an interview.
Thank you for your testimony, sir. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Ross?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Agent.
Afternoon, counselor.
I want to talk about your protection plan for this round. Because we can agree it was a pretty high risk event, right?
I would say so.
It was in a public area.
Yeah.
In a major city
Yes.
with thousands of people.
Yes, sir.
You know, you actually told Mr. Capello, I don't think you should have your rally, right?
As the Secret Service, we generally try to have people in closed spaces.
So you told him, Mr. Capello, I don't think this is going to be safe. You shouldn't do it in Rittenhouse Square, right?
I recommended we find a safer location.
But he insisted, didn't he?
He did.
So the Secret Service asked you to coordinate his security detail, true?
They did.
And you're the head of protection at the Secret Service, isn't that true?
I am.
It was your job to make sure that Mr. Capello was safe, right?
Myself and the other agents, yes.
But you led the charge to keep him safe, didn't you?
I was head of security. if That's what you're asking.
You coordinated the specific security detail for that event, right?
I did.
And on July 4th, the person you were supposed to protect was assassinated.
Yes, sir.
Well, I want to talk about what evidence you have that Miss Crosby even tried to plan an assassination. Because we can agree, Miss Crosby, she booked her flights all the way back in April, true?
That's what she told us.
She booked her hotel back in April,
Yes.
and you have no reason to doubt that that's true, right?
No.
Well, I want to talk about what Miss Crosby could have actually known in the month of April. Sir, you showed us this campaign flag, right?
That's right.
It says, Mr. Capello will be in Philadelphia, right?
That's what it says.
But it doesn't say Mr. Crosby will be in Philadelphia in Rittenhouse Square, does it?
No, it just says the cities and the dates.
And I want to talk about something else Miss Crosby couldn't have played. Because you told us that she was staying in the Sinesta, correct?
Right.
And that there was a hotel employee that saw her.
Harper Edwards.
We'll talk about that employee in a second, but I want to talk about that hotel a little bit more. She told you there were some specific security features of that hotel, right?
She did. We asked about surveillance and how easy it was to get to different floors.
To your knowledge, that information about the security of the hotel, that's not public information, is it?
I have no idea.
So you don't know whether or not that information was public or not?
As the Secret Service, we had access to the information. I'm not sure if they would just give it to anyone.
So you can't tell us if Miss Crosby had access to that information before she booked her flights on April 5th, right?
No.
And I want to talk about that witness a little bit more. Because you said she was an eyewitness, right?
That's right.
Well, I want to talk about what this eyewitness actually saw, Agent, because she didn't say, I saw Mr. Crosby on the Sinesta roof with a rifle in his hand. Did she?
Certainly didn't, sir.
She didn't say, I saw Miss Crosby with a rifle at all, right?
No.
She said, Miss Crosby tried to smoke on my roof. True?
That's what she said.
I told her it was employees only, right?
That's right.
She said, Miss Crosby went back downstairs. Isn't that right?
She said that she went back down to the 25th floor and then she didn't see her the rest of the day.
That witness's testimony was that she went on her floor and saw Miss Crosby go into her room, right?
That's what the witness believes happened.
Now, I want to get this time accurate, Agent, because that witness said she saw Miss Crosby at 12:45, right?
That's right.
Do you know when the shot was fired, Agent?
1:47 p.m.
That's over an hour before that shot was ever fired, right?
Yes, sir.
And that witness didn't report Miss Crosby had a duffel bag, right?
She said it was a drawstring bag.
Right. She said Miss Crosby just had a drawstring bag on her. Isn't that true?
Yes, sir.
That's all she was able to tell you about Miss Crosby's whereabouts that day. True?
She said that she was dressed in all black, that she had that drawstring bag, but yes.
Thank you, Agent. Thank you, Your Honor. I have nothing further.
Redirect.
Briefly, Your Honor. Sir, you were just asked if there was any evidence of Ms. Crosby having a plan in this case. Do you recall Mr. Harper asking you when those flights were booked by this defendant?
No,
Sir, do you remember saying that it was in April of 2022?
right, April 5th is when they made the tweet. And then the defendant told me that she had booked the flights,
Do you know what day the defendant booked her flight?
April 5th.
Nothing further. May this witness be excused.
Anything else?
No recross, Your Honor.
Yes. You can call your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. We call Dr. Joseph Wood. Permission to grab that whiteboard to set up the courtroom.
Sure.
May we proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Would you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Hello, my name is Joseph Wooden.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Wooden?
I'm a forensic examiner for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I'm the chief of the field office here in Philadelphia.
What qualifies you to be a forensic examiner?
Bachelor's degree in physics, a PhD in forensic science, 21 years as a forensic examiner for the FBI, the last 7 as chief.
Sir, how'd you become involved with the matters of today's case?
When Thomas Capello was assassinated last July 4th, I was asked to lead the forensic aspect of the investigation.
And did you lead that investigation, sir?
Yes, sir.
Did you come to any conclusions while you were leading that investigation?
Yes, sir.
What were they?
I formed several conclusions, but I'll group them in 2. First, that the forensic evidence, all of it, was consistent with the fatal shot being fired from the rooftop of the Sonesta Hotel near Rittenhouse Square. And second, that the forensic evidence found on that rooftop was linked to the defendant, Blake Crosby.
Well, let's break down those 2 conclusions, starting with the fact that this shooter shot from the Sonesta Hotel. Sir, would you be able to demonstrate for us how you determined that if you used a whiteboard?
I think that would help me explain my conclusions to the jury.
Your Honor, may this witness step down to make use of this whiteboard?
I guess.
Can opposing counsel see that? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Mr. Wooden, you have access to this whiteboard here. Can you go ahead and indicate for us a couple of markers where Rittenhouse Square is and the Sonesta Hotel?
Sure, and I'll be doing this from a side view. So we'll use this to indicate the side view of Rittenhouse Square here. And I'll draw the Sonesta here, labeled with an S inside a rectangle.
Can you connect those using dotted lines, sir?
Yes.
Why did you draw a downward angle?
In this case, we were trying to measure the angle of trajectory from the right to left. It was dead center within 5 degrees. But in this case, the downward angle is because we know that the bullet entered the victim's skull at a downward angle between 3 and 9 degrees, which I've indicated to you.
How far is that distance from the Sonesta Hotel to the place where Mr. Capello was assassinated?
We know that the distance from the Rittenhouse Square, the location where the victim was killed, to Sonesta is approximately 600 yards, plus or minus 200. And we know that the the vertical distance, the bullet traveled downward, was approximately 100 yards, plus or minus 25.
You just gave us a lot of numbers there, sir. Did you find that those angles actually matched the trajectory of that bullet as it was traveling to hit Mr. Capello?
Identically. The Rittenhouse Square to the Sonesta is 604 yards, and the height of the Sonesta is 93 yards, not only within the intervals, but almost dead center.
Sir, were you able to determine what kind of weapon could make a shot from 604 yards apart like we are here?
With any accuracy, it would require a sniper rifle.
Objection, Your Honor. Specifically to a lack of foundation, if I may be heard.
Sure.
Your Honor, we've heard about this witness's background in forensic evidence, but we need to hear a little bit more foundation as to how this witness will be able to opine as to the kinds of rifles and the specific training that will be needed to make this specific kind of shot. I'm not objecting specifically to the distance or the angle, but specifically that extra level of information that regards the kind of sniper rifle, which rifle that is, just a little bit more foundation to that effect about how he would know about military grade guns in particular.
Yes, Your Honor. Before trial today, me and Mr. Harper actually agreed that this witness was qualified under 702 to make expert conclusions on things like forensics, such as ballistics, as he's doing in this case. This witness has laid the proper foundation. In fact, we've agreed that the proper foundation has been laid up to this point for this witness to testify as to his knowledge regarding ballistics.
I believe Mr. Jones is correct. So what am I missing?
Yes, Your Honor, I'm specifically objecting to I understand that the witness is qualified in ballistics and perhaps can testify to the specific kind of gun. I was just objecting to the extent to which that would require a particular make and model of gun and the training that would be required to make that kind of shot. But if Your Honor believes that's within his expertise, we'll withdraw.
You can see that the conclusion that the doctor just gave is contained within his report.
I believe so, Your Honor. I think.
So the pretrial order says before trial, this court conducted an evidentiary hearing regarding the conclusions as stated in Exhibit 16, which is the report. The court finds that the forensic examiner's qualifications satisfy Federal Rule of Evidence 702. So would you agree with that? That encapsulates the conclusion as stated?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so you'll withdraw the objection?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, proceed.
So I'll ask you one more time. In conjunction with the investigation that you conducted, were you able to determine what kind of weapon would be consistent with making a shot from 600 yards away?
Sniper rifle.
Thank you, sir. You can retake your seat. I want to move then and determine whether you found evidence that this defendant had an opportunity to commit this crime. Sir, you said the second conclusion that you came to was about physical evidence. Can you tell us what you found?
On the rooftop of the Sinesta, I found two objects of significance, a bullet and a cigarette butt.
Do you recognize those two objects if I showed you here in court today?
I believe I would.
Approaching opposing counsel with exhibits 5 and 7. Approaching the witness with the same. You recognize what I just handed you there, sir?
Yes, sir.
What are those?
Exhibit 5 is the bullet that we recovered on the Sinesta rooftop. Exhibit 7, the cigarette butt.
You said that those two things, excuse me, Your Honor, we offer exhibits 5 and 7 into evidence.
Any objection?
Without objection, Your Honor.
They're admitted.
Sir, you said that those two things helped you determine that the defendant was connected to this crime. How so?
Start with the bullet. The bullet is consistent with the type fired from sniper rifles. It was at the south wall, which is the portion of the Sinesta rooftop that has a view of Rittenhouse. And the cigarette butt contained forensic evidence itself.
Sir, that bullet that you mentioned, did you determine why that was significant?
Yes, sir. Well, for one thing, we heard earlier that the defendant has a background as a sniper. This is the type of bullet used by snipers. In addition, we found an identical bullet type, same make, same model, same unusual blue color. This is a 7.62 51 millimeter NATO cartridge manufactured by Azul Ammo. We found that exact same color, make, model inside the victim's skull.
Then let's move to that cigarette butt. You said you found forensic evidence. What'd you find, sir?
3 types of forensic evidence on the cigarette butt. We found GSR, that's gunshot residue, indicating that it was within 5 feet of the gun being fired. Second, we found DNA, and third, we found fingerprints.
Sir, who did that DNA match?
6.2 billion to 1, the defendant.
Who did that fingerprint match?
16-point match to the defendant.
Did you find any evidence that anyone else matched those physical pieces of evidence that you found on the rooftop of the Sinesta Hotel?
The only saliva on the cigarette was the 6.2 billion to 1 match to the defendant. The only print on the cigarette was the 16-point match to the defendant.
Thank you for your time today, sir. Your Honor, we have no further questions. May we publish those to the members of the jury?
You may, and can we mark this as just something for the record?
Yes, Your Honor. May the record reflect that the witness identified a graph that he made indicating Rittenhouse Square in relation to the Sinesta Hotel and the distance between those two places.
Can we give it a letter or a number?
Yes, Your Honor. Government's 10.
Okay. Mr. Harper?
Yes, Your Honor, before Mr. Jones actually publishes those exhibits, I would actually like to retrieve exhibits 5 and 7. The
Okay.
the cross.
All right, proceed.
Good afternoon, Mr. Wooden.
Good afternoon, sir. It's Doctor.
Excuse me, Dr. Wooden. I want to walk through the 2 pieces of physical evidence you just told us about. I want to start with this bullet. Now, we can agree this was the same kind of bullet that killed Mr. Capello,
Yes,
and it was found on the rooftop, right?
yes,
But I want to be clear about what you didn't find on this bullet. You didn't find any fingerprints on that bullet, did you?
no forensic evidence on the bullet.
Find any DNA on the bullet connecting to Miss Crosby?
That's correct.
You didn't find any forensic evidence whatsoever connecting this bullet to Miss Crosby.
Disagree, sir.
Ma'am, sir, you didn't find DNA or fingerprint connecting this bullet to Miss Crosby, correct?
I didn't find that forensic evidence on the bullet, but you asked me if I found forensic evidence connecting the bullet to the defendant, and I did.
You didn't find any of that evidence on this bullet in particular.
That's correct.
Let's move on to this cigarette, because we can agree this cigarette was also found on the rooftop,
Yes, sir.
but you can't tell us exactly when it was left there, can you?
We know that it must have been left after July 2nd. It was rainfall, and as you can tell, that cigarette isn't damaged by rain. We know that it must have been left before we found it on July 5th. I can't narrow it down within that range, July 2nd to 5th.
So that's a range of 3 days, July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, that this cigarette could have been left on that rooftop, correct?
Or the 5th.
Including the 5th also, that's 4 days.
Yes, the 5th would be difficult because there was GSR, but I don't know that the gun was fired on July 4th. That seems logical, but we can't know that with certainty.
So you can't know with certainty that the gun was fired on July 4th?
I'm saying that we believe, of course, that it's the same gunshot that killed Mr. Capello that left the GSR on that cigarette. But of course, you can't match GSR to a particular gun. So I'm saying in theory, it could have been July 5th. Doesn't make sense with the rest of the evidence.
Because, sir, you actually didn't have a gun to test in this case, did you?
That's correct.
The Secret Service didn't give you a sniper rifle.
We recovered only part of a disassembled sniper rifle. We did not find the rest of it.
Let's talk about that part of a disassembled, excuse me, I want to go to that trigger guard for a second. Because that trigger guard, it was found in a public trash can
Yes, sir.
outside of a popular cheesesteak restaurant.
Yes, sir.
And that trigger guard also didn't have fingerprints on.
Correct.
It didn't have any DNA on it.
That's correct.
It wasn't actually forensically tied to Miss Crosby specifically through fingerprints or DNA at all, right?
True.
Then let's go back to the cigarette. Because we can agree that Miss Crosby's DNA, it was actually on the cigarette, right?
6.2 billion to 1.
Miss Crosby's fingerprints were on this cigarette.
Yes, sir.
But sir, we can agree. When you smoke a cigarette, you probably leave your DNA on it, right?
That's correct.
When you smoke a cigarette, you probably leave your fingerprints on, right?
Yes.
And you can't tell us DNA and fingerprints being on this cigarette means that Miss Crosby fired a sniper rifle, can you?
The one does not guarantee the other.
But you can't tell us that there was gunshot residue on this cigarette, right?
Yes.
I want to talk about what that gunshot residue can and can't tell us. That gunshot residue, it can't tell us when that cigarette was left there, can it?
Right. The gunshot residue is metal, barium and antimony, and there's no way to know when it was left on the cigarette.
Right, you can't tell us exactly when it was left on the cigarette at all.
Only within that 3-day range.
And you actually can't tell us who fired the gun based on that gunshot residue either.
From that alone,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
that's correct.
That gunshot residue certainly can't tell us that Miss Crosby fired a gun, right?
No, we know that the shooter must have been within 5 feet of the cigarette at the time the gunshot was fired, but that's all.
But that gunshot residue can't tell you who that shooter was, correct?
That is correct.
And I want to talk about some places you didn't find gunshot residue. Because the Secret Service, they looked at a lot, right?
Say that again, please.
They investigated Miss Crosby thoroughly, correct?
Yes,
You didn't find any gunshot residue on her clothes.
not that I'm aware.
Didn't find any gunshot residue in her hotel room.
Not that I'm aware. And I also was involved in the search of her hotel room.
Didn't find any gunshot residue on any of her belongings.
No,
You didn't find any gunshot residue besides the one you found on this cigarette, right?
That's true.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Your Honor. I have nothing further.
Redirect.
No redirect for the witness, Your Honor. May he step down?
Always good to see you, Doctor.
And may we publish those exhibits to the members of the jury?
Sure.
And just for the record, Your Honor, I'm also publishing Exhibit 12 that was entered earlier in trial today.
Any objection, Mr. Harper?
No objections, Your Honor.
With that, Your Honor, we rest our case in chief and we're ready to proceed.
Are we good to keep going? Does anybody need? Is there any emergencies that we need to take a break for?
No emergencies right now, Your Honor. We're ready to go into
All
our
right.
case in chief.
Okay, great. All right, so we'll proceed with it. Are you putting on a case, Mr. Harper?
Yes, we are, Your Honor.
Shocker. You can proceed when you're ready.
Yes, we call Miss Blake Crosby to the stand. May I proceed?
Yes.
Can you introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Good afternoon. My name is Blake Crosby.
Where are you from?
I'm from Los Angeles.
What do you do for a living?
Well, I used to work in the Army, but I was discharged a few years ago, and lately I've just been driving for Lyft and Uber.
Ms. Crosby, I want to talk about how we got here today. I want to address the allegations against you directly. Did you kill Thomas Capello?
No, of course not.
Were you ever on the roof of the Sonesta Hotel with a sniper rifle?
No,
Were you intending to kill Mr. Capello at all?
no. I didn't kill Senator Capello.
Ma'am, we've heard some testimony today. You didn't like Mr. Capello. Did you see that?
Yeah, I heard all of that.
Did you see the Twitter post that Mr. Jones showed?
Yeah, I saw what he showed you.
Ma'am, did you intend that Twitter post to be a credible death threat?
No, I didn't mean it to be a threat at all.
And I want to talk about how we got here. I want to start with why you were in Philadelphia in the first place. Why'd you go?
Well, I was attending a rally. Senator Capello was speaking in Rittenhouse Square, and I was there to protest.
When did you check into your hotel?
I got in on July 3rd, and that's when I checked into the Sonesta Hotel.
Ma'am, were you ever on the rooftop of the Sonesta Hotel at any time during your stay?
I was. On July 3rd, I went up to go smoke a cigarette.
Did the investigators ever ask you if you were on the rooftop?
They did.
Did you tell them that you had smoked that cigarette?
No, not at first.
Can you explain to the jury why? You didn't tell the investigators that you smoked that cigarette on the roof?
I was terrified. Senator Capello had been shot and killed, and I was being investigated by the FBI. I didn't tell them at first, but I told them eventually.
Were you on the rooftop of the Sonesta at any point on July 4th?
No, the only time that I went up there was to smoke that cigarette on 3rd.
Then I want to talk about where you actually were on the 4th. Ma'am, did you end up actually attending that rally?
Yeah, I did. I got there when it started at 1.
Were you alone?
No, there were thousands of people there, a lot of protesters just like me.
Ma'am, are you aware of anyone that could have seen you at that rally?
Well, everybody that was around me saw me at the rally, so I'm sure there were people that saw me.
Objection, Your Honor, to speculation.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor, it's not speculation for this witness to say that she was at a rally with thousands of people and it's potential that someone could have saw her. She's not saying that she specifically knows of a person that remembers seeing her. She's just saying that she was in a public place and thus people could have seen her. That's not speculation.
Your Honor, if the testimony was people could have seen me there, we wouldn't have an issue. But this witness just testified that everyone who was at the rally saw me. She's delving into their mindsets. It's inadmissible under 602.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Motion to strike that testimony, Your Honor.
Stricken.
Ma'am, are you aware of anyone that was there at the rally around you when you were there?
Yeah, there were people there around me.
And where were you when the gunshot rang out?
I was in the crowd. I didn't see the shot, but I heard it and I saw Senator Capello fall to the ground.
And I want to talk about what happened after July 4th. Were you ever interrogated by the police in this case, ma'am?
I was a few days after the shooting.
Did you tell them that you didn't have a rifle in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I told him that I didn't have a rifle I told him I didn't have a rifle at all.
Did you tell them that you weren't on the rooftop of this nest on July 4th?
Yeah, I told him that I had only been up there once on July 3rd, but never on July 4th.
Did you tell them that you didn't actually want to kill Thomas Capello?
I told them that I didn't want to, that I didn't kill them, but they kept asking me. I told them everything.
When you told them that, how were they responding?
They kept saying that they wanted me to prove it. I told them everything.
What did they do after that?
They arrested me.
Thank you, Ms. Crosby. Thank Your Honor, nothing further.
Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. May I gather a couple of documents
Sure, take your time.
and permission to approach the jury to grab a couple of pieces of evidence?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. May we proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
I'm looking for a number here. How many times did you lie to the FBI during the course of their investigation into you?
They asked me about me being on the rooftop and I lied a few times. I told them that I hadn't been up there, but eventually I told them that I did.
A few times, ma'am. Is that 3 times that you lied to the FBI?
I think so.
Let's walk through those for the members of the jury, because the FBI, they asked you, ma'am, have you ever been to the rooftop of the Sonesta Hotel? Right?
They asked me and initially I said no.
That's right, ma'am. Your answer to that question was no.
Right,
That was a lie.
it was.
Then investigators asked you again, ma'am, are you sure you've never been to the rooftop of the Sonesta Hotel? Right?
They did.
And to that second question, you said, no, never in my life have I ever been to the rooftop of the Sonesta Hotel.
That's right.
Ma'am, it wasn't until the FBI agents showed you some evidence that you changed your story.
They showed me the cigarette butt that I smoked and I told them the truth.
Ma'am, they showed you this cigarette butt.
That's right.
They said, we have evidence proving that you were on that rooftop.
That's right.
They said, we have your fingerprints.
They had fingerprints. They said they had some DNA on it.
They said, we have your DNA.
Right.
It was at that point that you told them, oh, I was on the rooftop on July 3rd, correct?
Yes.
With that in mind, then, I want to talk about whether you had the means, motive, and opportunity to commit this crime. Ma'am, you'd agree with me. You served in our U.S. military, correct?
That's right. 8 years.
8 years you served as a sniper, right?
That's what I did.
Ma'am, your job during those 8 years was to eliminate targets.
Yeah, that's what I did. It was a long time.
Eliminate people you deemed as threats.
Not people that I deemed as threats. I just did what I was told to do.
Safe to say, ma'am, you know how to lock onto a target, right?
Yes.
Safe to say, ma'am, you know how to aim.
Well, I did back when I was serving in the military. I don't know if I can still do something like that.
Well, that's because you're a 4-time sniping champion, right?
I won a few sniping competitions 10 years ago.
In fact, the longest distance that you ever sniped, ma'am, you know that it's not 200 yards, right?
No,
It's not 500 yards, right, ma'am?
no, I think it was somewhere around 1,500.
1,500 yards. That's the distance between the greatest target that you've ever hit in your sniping experience.
Yeah, I was able to hit that.
Let's move on then and talk about what you knew going into that campaign. Because, ma'am, you'd agree with me that you actually got to see Mr. Capello's campaign stops, right?
That's right. The rally on July 4th wasn't the only one I'd been to. I actually went to a few more before that.
But you knew that Senator Capello was going to be right here in Philadelphia on July 4th of 2022.
Sure, I knew the whole campaign schedule. They posted it on social media.
So before Senator Capello was assassinated, you knew where he was going to be.
I knew that he was going to be in Philadelphia, if that's what you mean.
And he had the experience of shooting a rifle up to 1,500 yards. That's correct.
Sure. Yeah.
Then let's talk a little bit more about whether you had a motive in this case. Because, ma'am, you said something interesting when you were speaking with Mr. Harper. You said that the tweet that you posted on April 5th, that you didn't mean it to be a threat at all, right?
Yeah, it wasn't a threat.
Can you flip to Exhibit 12 for me and let me know when you're there?
I'm there.
That tweet, you recognize it?
Yeah, I tweeted this.
Fairly and accurately depicts your words as you posted them, correct?
That's right.
Ma'am, this tweet, Your Honor, this is already in evidence. This tweet that you didn't intend to be a threat at all. It says, Thomas R. Capello is a threat to every person in this country, right?
Yeah, that's what I tweeted.
As long as he is alive, none of us are safe.
That's what I said.
Ma'am, that's because you value the military, right?
Yes,
You care about our military.
right.
You care about the service that you did
Yes, sir.
so much. Go ahead, finish that answer, man.
Sorry, I was just saying that I was proud of my service.
So much so that you would post this tweet online.
Sure.
This was the very same day that you found out exactly where Senator Capello was going to be on July 4th of 2022, isn't it?
This is the day that they released all of the campaign posts, if it would be.
So that's a yes. You posted this tweet the very same day you found that out, right?
Yes.
Finally, ma'am, I want to talk about whether you had an opportunity to commit this crime. You heard earlier in trial today when we were talking about sworn eyewitness testimony, correct?
Yeah, I heard that.
You heard that someone named Harper Edwards identified you at the rooftop, or excuse me, heading up to the rooftop of the Sonesta Hotel, right, ma'am?
That's right.
Ma'am, you heard them say that you were wearing all black clothing.
Yes, sir.
You heard them say that you were wearing a baseball cap.
Yes.
Ma'am, you heard them say that this person picked you out of a six-pack lineup.
That's right.
To your knowledge, ma'am, you've never had an interaction with this person before, have you?
Well, they were the concierge person at the hotel.
So to your knowledge, that's the only interaction that you had?
That's right.
Ma'am, you're telling us that the person who identified you out of the six-pack lineup, that they got it wrong?
No, I never said that.
But that's what you think, right, ma'am? So you're telling us that you were at the Sonesta Hotel?
At 12:45, I went up to go smoke at the roof, but then they told me not to, so I left.
So you're telling the members of the jury that at 12:45, you were in the Sonesta Hotel?
That's right, and then I went to the rally.
Ma'am, we can agree that before Senator Capello was killed, you had access to that rooftop.
I didn't go on that rooftop, no.
Ma'am, you're telling us you didn't go on that rooftop, even on July 3rd of 2022?
I went on July 3rd, but not on July 4th.
So let's be clear, you had access to that rooftop before Senator Thomas Capello was killed, yes or no?
A day before, sure.
Nothing further.
Reiterate.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Crosby, was Philadelphia the only stop on your trip?
No, I went to 5 different rallies before I came to Philadelphia.
And why did you go to all of those rallies?
I served in the military, and Senator Capello wanted to defund the military, and I know that people think that that's less drone strikes, but that's less access to healthcare, insurance, education, stuff that I wouldn't be able to afford. I went to these rallies to protest.
And to your knowledge, is protesting a crime?
I don't think it is.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. I have nothing further.
Anything else?
No recross. With the court's permission, this witness can step down.
Mr. Harper, do you have any further evidence?
No further witnesses, Your Honor. At this time, we rest our case in chief.
All right, are we ready to proceed to closing arguments?
Yes, Your Honor, just a moment to set up the courtroom.
Why don't we take 4 or 5 minutes and come back at 4:10?
Understood, Your Honor.
Don't talk because your mic's on.
It sure.
Literally filling my mind. This table is there.
All right, are both parties present and ready to proceed to closing arguments?
Government is here and ready, Your Honor.
The defense is ready as well.
Great, Mr. Jones. All right, let's make it 4:12. I take back everything I said about them pre-trial. Now you can proceed, Mr. Jones.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court. This defendant took a life to stop the vote. Public discourse, members of the jury. It's the bedrock of our country. For people to be able to civilly disagree with one another, our country relies upon it. We need it. But when people who disagree with a political opinion get to gun those people down in the streets in front of thousands of other people, we have a duty to hold those people responsible for their actions. Today, you learned that this defendant took Senator Thomas Capello's life to stop a vote. That's why we've charged her with murder, which means we had the burden to prove our case to you beyond a reasonable doubt. We had to show you two things: identity and intent. Who killed Thomas Capello and why did it happen? We met our burden today, members of the jury, by showing you this defendant's means, her motive, and her opportunity to commit this crime. And I'm going to walk you through it one more time so you know exactly how to answer that question that's going to be on the jury verdict form when you go back to deliberate. Starting with the defendant's means. Because today you heard that she is an experienced sniper, 8 years in the military, and not just any sniper, one of the best. 4 times she was the champion of the all-army sniping competition. And if you're wondering how good she was, not 600 feet, 800, 1,000, 1,200, 1,400, 1,500 feet. That's how far this defendant could lock onto a target with a sniper and hit it square on, like she was shooting a senator in his head. You heard that this defendant had the means to commit this crime. That brings us to her motive. Because today she tried to tell you that this tweet, it's not a threat at all. Look at it, members of the jury. Thomas R. Capello is a threat to every person in this country. And if that's not enough, as long as he's alive, none of us are safe. That's how this defendant felt. That's how strongly she disliked Mr. Capello's views. That's how strongly she felt about his position on the military. That's how much she disagreed with Senator Thomas Capello. And you heard exactly what she did about it. Members of the jury, if there's a moment that I want you to remember, it's when Mr. Harper came up here and tried to hide this piece of evidence for you, because the first thing he did was turn it around. Well, here it is again. You heard that this was the opportunity that this defendant had to commit this crime. We had an expert come up here and map out for you exactly how this shows this defendant is responsible for the crime. You heard that 600 yards, that's no easy shot. It requires a trained and experienced sniper. It requires the level of experience of this defendant. But how do you know that she was the person who was on that rooftop? These two pieces of evidence. You're going to get to look at these when you're back in the deliberation room, and you're going to get to hear. You've already heard how these pieces of evidence tie this defendant to the scene of the crime. Starting with this bullet. You heard that this is a military-grade bullet, consistent with military rifles, consistent with a military officer shooting this bullet into Thomas Capello. And who was it? One person's DNA was found on that rooftop. One person's fingerprints were found on that rooftop. One person was a 1 in 6.2 billion chance match to this cigarette. The defendant. There's no question in your mind left that this defendant was on that rooftop. In fact, you heard her when she was on the stand today. She got it mixed up herself. Was she on the rooftop at 12:45, or is the story that she told the FBI correct? Was she there? Was she not there? Members of the jury, she's lying then. And if you're going to believe that the first time she's going to tell the truth is in court today when she's on the hook for murder, I'll tell you that it's not. This defendant lied to the FBI, and she's lying to you here in court today when she says that she was never on that rooftop. You have evidence that suggests otherwise. Today, we've shown you the means, her motive, and her opportunity. Mr. Harper has been trying to tell you all throughout today's trial that there are holes in this case, and I want to be sure to address each of the ones he's probably going to talk about in just a moment. No weapon. Members of the jury, it's true, we didn't recover a weapon in this case. But you have to assess the totality of the circumstances, because it's not just that this was a military-grade rifle. It's not just that the military-grade bullet was found square in Senator Capello's head. It's that this defendant was the only person with the relevant experience to have fired that shot. He's going to talk to you about how there's no witnesses in this case. You actually are going to get the chance to review sworn eyewitness testimony from Harper Edwards. You're going to hear that this person identified the defendant, had never seen her before. Out of a 6-pack lineup, she chose this person with 100% confidence. You have a witness. And then he's going to try to tell you that there's no evidence that she had a plan. Really, members of the jury? April 5th of 2022, the same day that that tweet was posted when she was expressing all her hatred towards Senator Thomas Capello. That's the very same day that she booked her flights here to Philadelphia. She planned it all out. She walked up to the stairs, to the rooftop, to the Sonesta Hotel, took that rifle she disassembled out of her bag, set it up, and shot Senator Thomas Capello. We've proven to you that she had the means, the motive, and the opportunity. Find her guilty of murder because she took a life to stop a vote. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, counsel. Defense.
Yes, Your Honor.
Of course.
We have exhibit 12, Mr. Green.
I do.
Thank you. May I proceed? May it please the court. Mr. Jones. Members of the jury. About a year ago, Morgan DeVico is sitting down with Thomas Capello. They're planning his upcoming rally. He says, I don't think it's safe. There's too many people. There's too many buildings. There's too many windows. I can't secure them all. And on July 4th, he realized he was right. There were too many people. There were too many buildings. There were too many windows, and he couldn't find the chute. But he needed to find an answer. And here we are a year later with his answer. With Miss Crosby on trial, without a shred of reliable evidence. You see, in a murder case, in an assassination, what did you expect to see the sniper rifle that Mr. Jones has been talking about today? You didn't see it. In an assassination, what did you expect to see hard evidence of a plan, research, and investigation before she even stepped foot in Philadelphia? You didn't see that either. If the Secret Service thought Miss Crosby was a suspect, you would have expected someone to get on this stand and say, I saw her do the crime that the government is accusing her. You didn't hear that either. Mr. Jones wants to ask why Miss Crosby lied to the FBI. This is why. She knew that she was being accused of a crime that she didn't commit, and they didn't have any evidence against her. And look at where we are now. Frankly, members of the jury, she was right. Because now she's on trial, and these prosecutors have a burden that they haven't met. It's called a burden of proof. They've carried it this entire trial, and it never shifted to the defense team. It's a burden to prove every single element of that charge, not until it's possible or probable or likely or more than likely, they have to show you that Miss Crosby is guilty beyond all reasonable doubt. Is that really what you heard from the evidence today? Can you actually be sure Miss Crosby was on the roof on July 4th at the time these prosecutors say she was? No. Because there's too many holes in the government's case, so I want to go through them again. First, they don't have a weapon. I find it interesting that Mr. Jones says, well, her DNA was found on the rooftop. Her DNA was found on the rooftop. You know what it wasn't on? A gun. It wasn't on a gun because they didn't find one. They want you to believe that Miss Crosby was able to disassemble a sniper rifle in just hours with the city crawling with Secret Service agents. Is that reasonable to believe? And that no one, not one agent, not one person, not a single camera caught her doing that? Maybe it's because she didn't do it. It's important that the government doesn't have a weapon because their version of this crime, it requires a very specific one. And you didn't hear any evidence of how she would have had it. What, did she fly with a sniper rifle through TSA to Philadelphia? Did she buy one on the street when she was in Philly? No, members of the jury, you don't get that gun off of the street. You have to acquire that. That takes time. That takes money that she told you she doesn't even have. They really want you to believe that this woman was carrying a sniper rifle in a hotel down the street? That's not reasonable, members of the jury. So, no witnesses. See, I want to clear up something that came up on Miss Crosby's cross-examination. Because Mr. Jones said, well, you actually were on the rooftop on July 4th? Miss Crosby said no. She said, I tried to go on the rooftop to smoke a cigarette, exactly what she had done the day before. But you know what's important about that interaction, members of the jury? It was an hour before the shooting. And they couldn't find a single person that saw her on that rooftop. They couldn't find a single camera that caught her leaving that hotel at that time. They couldn't find a single witness that could tell you that she was actually at the rally. And I want to be clear, it wasn't my job to call an alibi witness and put them on the stand and say, I saw Miss Crosby at the rally. It was their job to rule that out as a possibility. And did they do that? How many people did you hear from that were at that rally? What videos did you have from that rally? Maybe if you had them, you would have seen that Miss Crosby was there. But and it wasn't my job to bring it. It's the government. Finally, no plan. Mr. Jones says that there's actually evidence of a plan in this case. But I want to be clear about what that plan was. Because it wasn't the plan that Mr. Jones is saying Miss Crosby made. It was a plan to protest. Mr. Jones is right. Our democracy doesn't work like this. People don't just assassinate political people that they don't like, but that's not what Miss Crosby did. If she really just wanted to assassinate Thomas Capello in Philadelphia, why was she on the campaign trail with him for weeks beforehand? Why did she go to 5 separate rallies beforehand? Maybe because she was actually protesting. Maybe because she just cared about political topics that were important. Just think about it, members of the jury. You don't just randomly book at a hotel with a perfect shot of Rittenhouse Square. You don't just randomly book at a hotel that has no security cameras in the stairwell. You don't just randomly book at a hotel that has no ID access to the rooftop. But these prosecutors want you to believe that that's exactly what she did. No search history, no investigation. She didn't go to the hotel. How do we even know that she would know any of the things that make their story even possible? You don't have that evidence. You don't have it because it doesn't exist. Because Miss Crosby wasn't on the rooftop of the Sonesta Hotel. She was at the rally protesting. And when these prosecutors want you to believe otherwise, when they want you to believe that she was shooting someone at the exact same time, they can't just tell you that their story is true. They have to prove it. They couldn't find the shooter, but they needed an answer. And in a few moments, when you go back in that deliberation, the judge is going to ask you for your answer. Your answer after hearing the entirety of the evidence in this case. And when you do, I want you to think about the evidence that you don't have. I want you to think about the eyewitnesses that you didn't hear. I want you to think about the gun that you didn't see. I want you to think about the plan that you don't have evidence of. Members of the jury, you don't have any evidence to prove the thing that they're accusing her of. When you go back in that deliberation, don't let Mr. Jones pick your answer for you. Find Ms. Crosby not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Rebuttal.
Yes, Your Honor. May I ask us how much time I have? Thank you so much.
Just gonna wrap this. Can I proceed? Yes.
The evidence showed an answer. Mr. Crosby's right, Mr. Harper's right. We have to meet our burden today. And maybe this crime is possible when the defendant had access to the dates that Mr. Capello was going to be in Philadelphia. Maybe it starts to be a little bit more clear and convincing when there's an eyewitness who places her at the Sonesta Hotel. Maybe it gets closer to beyond a reasonable doubt when her service history is the only relevant person who can be a sniper to hit this person at this distance. But members of the jury, when her DNA, when a military-grade bullet is tied to the scene of the crime, and 1 in 6.2 billion found by the FBI tells us that she was on that rooftop, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. She took Senator Capello's life to stop a vote. Find her guilty. Thank you for your time.
Let's give him a round of applause. We're just going to confirm that all the ballots are in, and then we're going to hear each judge's favorite moment from each advocate from the trial. So just hang tight for a second. So we'll start with Bart and then we'll go. I will start.
Fantastic. Hello, hello. Fantastic job, you guys. You were both exceptional. You already know that. You should be very proud that you got here, that you made it to this round. And you know, this will always live in the internet forever. So good, bad, ugly, it's there. Because Phil wants to do our favorite moment for each advocate of the trial. My favorite moment for Josiah was when you walked away for the distances of the sniping. I thought it was a great use of the space. It was reactive to the size of the room, and it really just sold the point of it wasn't this far, this far, this far. And I thought that was great. It was very captivating. So that was really well done. And obviously, maybe something you had done earlier in the week, but not something you could have planned for because not every room had that. So that was great. Travis, you obviously are so comfortable in your own skin, and that makes it very fun to watch you compete because it's not put on, it's not forced. So my favorite moment, it was probably a couple of moments, a number of moments, anytime where I could just tell you were having a blast. So in the beginning of your opening statement, you started all the way back there and you ran up. It just any moment where I could tell you were just having a blast, that was my favorite moment. So when you were moving around, excited, that was, I know that's not one, but that's kind of encapsulates for me what were my favorite moments for you.
This was such a fun round to watch. Usually when I'm watching mock trials, I get more tired as the round goes on. And I found myself being more invested, which is huge, huge for a round. Josiah, my favorite moment was in your closing as the government saying, I'm going to now respond to what he's going to say the holes in my case are. So many people wait till their rebuttal and you only have 51 seconds. And you got to make it a huge part of your closing to say, he's going to say, I don't have this evidence. I'm going to tell you that I do right now. I thought it was a great way to do it. Travis, you have so much fun. Your closing, when people say you take over the wall, it's not just that you're on left, right, you're on up, down, you're all over. But my favorite thing you said in closing is it's just logistical, like an argument that just makes so much sense is where'd she get this gun? She bring it on a plane or is she just walking around the Sinesta with this giant rifle? It's one of those things that like you don't think of and then you hear it and you're like, that makes so much sense. Like you're holding this giant gun in your hands. Where's it coming from? So such a smart argument and such a good way with the way you present things and that you use all the space and show how big it would be to do it. It's a great way to make an argument while also physically making the argument. But awesome round. I have no idea how this is going to go. And I'm like nervous to find out. I'm sure you are.
Yeah, so wonderful round, wonderful round. I thought that the best moment for me was when you stood up for the cross of the defendant. And that's just such a powerful opening. When you say, I'm looking for a number and you put that on them and you just have to squirm. I mean, what are you supposed to say? Because you say the wrong number. It was a great way to start, put you on the defensive. I was like, what are you going to say? And you did well, but that was a great moment. And for Travis, my favorite was, there are some facts in a case that are just so terrible, like the DNA and the gunshot residue. That's just, it's only one-sided. And the lying to the FBI, it seems on its face, that is so one-sided. But to find an angle in your closing to say, actually, that just shows how crazy this government is. It's not easy to do. And it was very well done. So I thought that was your best moment. Really great round. So much fun to watch.
Congratulations to you both. You were both fantastic. Josiah had the same favorite moment. It was the cross-examination of the defendant. It's just such a fun way to start a cross-examination. And I mean, at least a little bit risky to ask something open-ended by that. So I appreciated the risk that you took. Travis, I thought your in piece of your opening statement was your best moment. It's so hard. Oh, sorry, Grace. You'll have to come up with a new one. It was such a way to grab all of our attention, especially going second. It's hard to do. So I thought that was incredible. The best thing for both of you is that you have such different styles, and I can tell it reflects your personalities. And for whatever reason, it also perfectly fit the sides of the case that you were on. You were so put together and government and ready to convict this defendant. And then you were such a charming and charismatic defense attorney. I'm sure anybody accused of murder would be happy to have you as their lawyer. So it was so good to see you both in your own personalities within these roles too. So whichever programs you go to, hopefully Drexel will be lucky to have you.
Hello. I'm going to be very brief because if I went up against either of you, I would lose. You have both mastered the art of mock trial. Seriously, both of you had incredible themes, very structured cases with 3 points for both of you. For the government, my favorite point in the trial for you was not just the whiteboard moment, because everyone loves a whiteboard moment, but it was in closing when you were like, they didn't like this whiteboard. So we know that that was clearly off the cuff, which I loved. Defense, it's very hard to make Mr. Bernstein look like a dummy, but you did. You really did. That's a compliment, though, that it's hard to make you look like a dummy. So backhanded. And like I said, my favorite part actually of the trial for you was the opening in piece. You are a storyteller, totally through and through. So congratulations to both of you. And if there are any competitors in the room that competed here this weekend, congratulations to all of you as well. Really cool that you were all here and competing.
Hello, I want to very, very quickly commend the students who were playing the witnesses in this round as well. Both of you were exceptionally committed and invested, and it really, for me, raised the level of the round. Often when you get to law school and if you continue to do competitions in law school, you will be in competitions where the witnesses are not invested and are not engaged and don't remember anything about what their witness did or knows in any way.
But we do like law school competition, don't we, Ryan?
Yo, it's great. It's great. For Josiah and Travis, I mean, what is that to say? We are splitting the thinnest of hairs possible here, I think. Josiah, for you, my standout moment is your closing argument. I thought you were so steadfast and precise throughout the entire trial, and then you really got this moment where it seemed to me like you came alive in the closing argument. It was great. Travis, a couple of people said it already. I think it's worth saying why the introduction to the opening statement is so good and why it was so helpful and why it was your best moment is because for me, it was the only real moment in this trial where anyone conveyed the panic and what it's like to be in a crowd when something like a gunshot goes off, right? And how easy it is for an investigator or a Secret Service person to, in this moment of panic, grab onto the first thing that they can and then pull from there, right? And so I just exceptionally done set up your entire case exceptionally well.
I know that waiting to hear comments from the last scoring judge is literally the worst thing to happen to you all day, so I will keep this quick. First, just major kudos to the unsung heroes of this round, the second chairs. The rounds obviously would not function the way that they do without somebody by your side, so don't forget that this is also for you guys. My favorite moments, Josiah, had to be your rebuttal because it capitalized off a really effective moment in Travis's close where he got down on the ground and said, they don't have this much, they don't have this much. And you said, actually, let's talk about exactly what we have. And I'll tell you how far that gets us. I thought that was very effective. Travis, I thought your standout moment was in your closing. It was just one line where you incorporated your theme and said, don't let Mr. Jones choose the answer for you. I thought that was really effective and a great way to go out, but great job to all of you.
I just want to acknowledge that Ryan broke the rules and gave the witnesses comments, but Ryan also stole my thunder. I do want to acknowledge the two witnesses. They were fantastic. Murray Edwards from Furman and Taj Burnett from Northwestern. One more round of applause. Jokes aside, I think Ryan is absolutely right that it really makes the final round just that much better when you have two competitors who are excellent and committed to the roles. So thank you both. Of course, this was a split decision. And of course, it was 4-3. And of course, it was by one check mark. The 2023 Trial by Combat national champion is Travis Harper. Okay.
Congratulations. Oh, don't.
Be careful with that.
Too
And
clumsy.
before we go any further, I want to recognize Josiah Jones from Irvine, a junior, awesome final round. What a great performance. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you to everyone for coming out, for watching. We really appreciate, what a fantastic weekend. These weekends are always amazing. This one was no exception. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next year in LA.